Hi, today we're going to look at Genesis chapter 32, and we'll begin with verse 22. Let us hear the word of the Lord. The same night he got up and took 2 wives with him, his 2 maids and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When a man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go, unless you bless me." Here is when Jacob realizes he is wrestling truly with one who is able to bless him, that being God. So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with humans, and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Therefore to this day the Israelites do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the hip socket, because he struck Jacob on the hip socket at the thigh muscle. And may the Lord bless the reading of his holy word. Today we're looking at, what are we wrestling with? Alone and afraid, Jacob wrestles during the night with a man whom we know to be God. Jacob's opponent also blesses him, and his opponent again represents the face of God. The angel of God in the Bible is frequently identified with God himself. The fact that Jacob wrestles with God gives the patriarch, gives Jacob unparalleled stature. Because who else would even dare to do this? At this critical moment in life, spending the night on the border of the promised land and ready for re-entry, Jacob struggles with God in a way that echoes both his name and the land that he will inherit. Today, we're going to look a little bit further what causes Jacob such anxiety, causes Jacob to be wrestling in the night, wrestling with what we appear to say the face of God. Well, first, the reason. Why do people, and in this case, Jacob, torture themselves with anxiety? Well, medically we know that sometimes it's caused by some chemicals that are imbalanced in your brain and they cause you some anxiety. But there are also other reasons. And here today, Jacob wrestles with God. One of the reasons is loneliness. In Genesis 32:24, it says, Jacob was left alone. Jacob was already disturbed. He is already bothered. He is already having a hard time with what occurred with his brother Esau. But being alone triggered a lot of anxiety. For some people, being alone indeed does that. It can be a struggle to be by oneself. And anxiety itself often raises up during those lonely times. Loneliness can render us incompetent for some of life's great tasks. Look at Moses in Numbers 11 and verse 14. Numbers 11 and the 14th verse. I'm not able to bear all this people alone because it's too heavy for me. Moses said it was too heavy to do it by himself. So what did God do? He gave him 70 elders to help him. We're never alone. There's always somebody around to help us. God's Spirit will not desert us, and God's people will be there. Loneliness removes us from the source of encouragement. Let's look at Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and the 10th verse. Ecclesiastes 4, verse 10. If one falls down, his friend can help him out. But pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up. Isn't it great to have others there beside you to help you up? Several months ago, a person I know had a fall outside of a local store. And when he had that fall, he probably at first felt so alone and so scared. But yet, many employees at that store rushed out. And then some from another store and another store came out to help this man, to help him get off the ground, to call somebody from his family to come to help him. He was not left alone. You're not alone either. There will be those that come to your aid. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. But God will not leave you alone. When we are alone, though, we have a way of developing a sense of self-pity. And that self-pity intensifies our anxiety. So we need to surround ourselves with believers, with people of faith. And so our reasons often for anxiety, one is loneliness. Two are past transgressions. It's what we've done in the past. Jacob never forgot what he did to his brother, what he did to Esau. And these sins plagued Jacob day and night. And our past sins, our past wrongdoings, our past way of treating others has a way of haunting us, has a way of bothering us for a multitude of reasons. Then, besides past transgressions and loneliness, judgment is also a reason for anxiety. In Genesis 32, verses 6 through 8, we hear these words. The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, We came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him into flocks and herds and camels into two companies, thinking if Esau comes to the one company and he destroys it, then the company that is left will escape. Here, Jacob's afraid. He's afraid of the judgment that is coming. A severe judgment that he knew he deserved. And he indeed was afraid of that, and it made him anxious. And the fourth reason is the fear of the unknown. Jacob had a sleepless night because he feared what tomorrow might bring. Have you not had nights like that? Where you became anxious, wondering what tomorrow could bring. Many of those worries are things that never come to be. We've got to trust God to give us peace to calm those anxieties, to calm those worries, to calm the fear of the unknown. We spend many sleepless nights over things that we cannot control in our brain, at least not by ourselves. So we see 4 reasons thus far in our text for anxiety, at least in Jacob's case. Loneliness, his past transgressions, judgment that he thinks is coming, and the fear of the unknown, not knowing for sure what's going to happen. And so we see the reasons. Next, we see the results. Needless worry. Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, said in Genesis 32 and the 7th verse. The events of the next day proved all of Jacob's worries were needless. Flip over to Genesis 33 and verse 4. And we read these words as Esau comes and meets Jacob. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him. And they wept. Esau ran to him, embraced him, kissed him, and they cried together. That sounds like love, doesn't it? It sounds like forgiveness. It sounds like he's over the issue. It sounds like Jacob's worries were needless. It happens so often in our lives. And that's what was happening in Jacob's life. Worry complicates life. I'd love to say I never worry, but I do. I'm as guilty as the next person. And so today when we're looking at this passage and I'm preaching these words about what are you wrestling with, I too wrestle with things. You wrestle with things. It is the reality of being human, but it's not an excuse. God is there to help us, and we need to use God to help us to overcome those anxieties, to overcome those worries that complicates life. The problem was really simple. Reconciliation with Esau, which we saw in that verse that we just read. Psalm 55 and verse 22 tells us, cast your burden upon the Lord. Cast your anxieties, cast your worries, cast your fears. Cast whatever is bothering you upon the Lord, and he indeed will help you. We should pray and trust God and not try to solve all these worries, these anxieties by ourselves, but we need to face the real issue and not have those sleepless nights. The remedy in our text was truly confession in Genesis 32 and verse 10. The confession of that which was keeping us in distress, causing us anxiety. And then we need to petition. We petition God and ask God for help. To have persistent faith. The wrestling match in our text today shows that Jacob truly was wrestling. But God will reward our faith that as we hang in there, as we keep on wrestling towards God, He will give us a brighter tomorrow. And in this case, He gave Jacob a new name. We too wrestle with many things in our life. I'm not sure what you're wrestling with in your life, nor do I need to know. But God is already aware. We need to turn those things over to God and ask God to help us to pin those things once and for all, to have that victory. And as we turn it over to God, we indeed can have the victory of all victories. Today, my friends, seek God, draw near to Him, and He will draw near to you. May God's blessings abide with you. May He provide you the help, the hope, the comfort, the joy that you long for. And until we meet again, God bless you and keep you. Amen.